Hey guys, tonight we journey to a land of shimmering sands and colossal monuments, a place where the very air feels thick with ancient secrets and the sun beats down with an intensity that would make most of us wilt before we even got out of the chariot. We're talking about ancient Egypt, of course. And if you're thinking this is going to be all about pyramids and mummies, well, you're right. But we're also going to peel back the layers and discover something even more fascinating. How the women of this sun-drenched civilization, the pharaoh's wives, the noble ladies, and even the everyday women, managed to not just survive, but to actually flourish and maintain their stunning beauty in this incredibly challenging environment. Think about it. No air conditioning, no SPF 50 sunscreen that comes in a convenient spray bottle. If you were living here thousands of years ago, just stepping outside could feel like walking into an oven, and the dust would get everywhere. It coats your tongue, gets in your hair, and seems to cling to your clothes like a second skin. You might actually not survive your first day here without knowing a few tricks. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're about to step into a world where beauty wasn't just about vanity, but a deeply ingrained part of culture, health, and even spirituality. You're in ancient Egypt now, and your quest for the perfect skin, the most captivating gaze, starts now. Imagine the heat already. Welcome. Stepping into ancient Egypt is like stepping into a warm, dry embrace, a land carved by a single, magnificent river. You arrive, and immediately, the sun. It's not just bright. It's a physical presence, a tangible force that presses down from an impossibly blue sky. Your skin, probably used to the more forgiving climate of wherever you're watching from, starts to feel the immediate impact. You can almost feel your pores widening, searching for moisture that isn't there, and the fine, pervasive dust begins to settle on everything. A soft, gritty blanket that hints at the dryness of this ancient land. It's a landscape that demands respect, a place where survival itself is an art form. You can't just casually stroll around here without a plan. You'd likely end up looking like a forgotten jerky stick by lunchtime. The Egyptians, however, were masters of adaptation. They didn't just endure this environment, they thrived in it. And part of that thriving involved an incredible focus on preserving their appearance and health against the elements. It's easy to romanticize ancient Egypt, picturing them gliding around in linen robes, looking effortlessly regal. But the reality was much more hands-on. They were practical people, and their beauty rituals were born out of necessity as much as aesthetic desire. Think about it. No air-conditioned chariots, no mineral-rich facial mist that you can spritz on your lunch break. Certainly no Instagram filters to smooth out that desert complexion. Their beauty regimen had to be robust, effective, and deeply integrated into their daily lives, using what the land itself provided. The Nile, that life-giving artery of Egypt, was their lifeline. It wasn't just for drinking water or irrigation. It was the source of a bounty of natural ingredients that formed the very basis of their skincare and cosmetic practices. The fertile silt deposited by the annual floods created lush strips of land where plants could grow, plants that held incredible properties for health and beauty. And while we might think of ancient peoples as being a bit unhygienic by our standards, the Egyptians were actually quite fastidious. Cleanliness was deeply tied to their religion. They believed purity was essential for spiritual well-being, and this extended to their physical appearance. So, when you're here, you're stepping into a culture that valued both practical solutions for harsh conditions and a profound spiritual connection to beauty and cleanliness. It's a fascinating duality that we'll be exploring tonight. So, you've just stepped off the boat, or maybe you rode in on a camel that looked like it hadn't seen a good scrub in years. Either way, you're here. Ancient Egypt. The air is thick, not just with heat, but with the scent of the Nile, a sort of fertile, earthy aroma mixed with something vaguely fishy, and maybe a hint of donkey? It's a lot to take in. You squint against the blinding sun, the kind of sun that feels like it's trying to bake you into a crispy, golden brown statue right on the spot. Your skin, probably accustomed to a bit of cloud cover or at least a decent pair of sunglasses, is already starting to feel the strain. You can practically feel your pores opening up, gasping for air, and the dust. Oh, the dust. It's everywhere. It coats your tongue, gets in your hair, and seems to cling to your clothes like a second skin. If you were hoping for a pristine, sterile environment, you might be a little disappointed. This isn't a spa day, honey, this is survival. And you think you have trouble with the sun? Imagine living here when the only shade comes from your own hat, and that hat is probably made of woven reeds, which, let's be honest, offers about as much protection as a sieve. Your skin, unprotected, would start to burn, peel, and generally feel like it's been left on a grill for too long. And that's before we even get to the actual beauty secrets. The ancient Egyptians knew this was a challenge. They weren't just casually lounging in air-conditioned palaces, soaking up the rays from a safe distance. They lived in it. They worked the land, they sailed the Nile, they built these incredible monuments, all under that relentless, glorious, and frankly, quite aggressive sun. So, how did they keep their skin from looking like a dried-out piece of papyrus? How did they achieve that radiant, often described as almost luminous, complexion that we see in their art and statues? They weren't just blessed with divine genes, you know. They had a whole arsenal of tricks. It turns out, their approach to skincare was far more sophisticated than just slapping on some mud and hoping for the best. And while we might raise an eyebrow at some of their methods today, some things were definitely earthy. You have to admire their ingenuity. They learned to harness the very resources of this harsh land, the Nile, the plants that grew along its banks, even the animals, to create something truly special. It's a story of resilience, innovation, and a deep understanding of how to work with their environment rather than against it. So, get ready, because we're about to dive into the ancient Egyptian beauty cabinet, and trust me, it's full of surprises. You're standing here, the Egyptian sun beating down like a golden hammer. Your skin is screaming for help, begging for something, anything, to protect it. You look around for a bottle of sunscreen, but of course, there isn't one. What do? Well, the ancient Egyptians had an answer. Their first line of defense against the relentless solar assault wasn't just about staying in the shade, though they certainly did that when they could. No, their real secret weapon was something they called Kohl, but we're not quite there yet. Before that, they needed a general-purpose skin protector, a sort of all-purpose balm against the desert's harsh embrace. And what did they use? Not fancy synthesized oils, but good old-fashioned animal fats. Think beef tallow or rendered sheep fat. Now, I know what you're thinking, EW fat? But this wasn't just any fat. They rendered it down, purified it, and then infused it with fragrant plants and spices like myrrh, frankincense, and cinnamon. So, while it might have started as a humble animal product, it transformed into something much more civilized and, frankly, quite aromatic. This fatty mixture created a protective barrier on the skin. It helped to seal in moisture, preventing the harsh, dry air from stripping away your natural oils, a bit like a primitive, greasy moisturizer. It was also believed to have properties that helped soothe the skin and prevent inflammation. So, imagine smearing a thick, somewhat greasy, but pleasantly fragrant ointment all over your face and body before heading out. It wasn't exactly Chanel No. 5, but it was effective. This wasn't just for the ladies, by the way. Men, children, everyone who was exposed to the elements would have used this. It was a practical necessity for survival. And then there's the other aspect, the dust. Oh, the dust. It's not just dirt, it's fine, powdery, and it gets into every single pore, every crease. Imagine trying to keep your skin looking clear and fresh when it's constantly being exfoliated, whether you like it or not, by microscopic sand particles. This is where their ingenuity truly shines. They learned to use finely ground minerals, often mixed with these same animal fats, to create pastes and powders. These weren't just for aesthetics. They helped to create a barrier against the dust and the sun. Think of it as a very early, very natural form of mineral foundation designed for protection. Some historians even suggest that certain mineral compounds, like lead-based ones, were used in small quantities. We'll get to the eye makeup later, which definitely involved some heavy-duty minerals. And it's possible they had some rudimentary sun-blocking properties, though the toxicity factor is something we'll address with a polite, academic shudder. The key takeaway here is that their approach was holistic. They understood that protecting the skin was about more than just blocking UV rays. It was about preventing dehydration, soothing irritation, and creating a barrier against the pervasive dust. It was a science, really, albeit a very ancient one, and they got surprisingly good at it. They weren't just slathering on grease. They were carefully formulating mixtures based on what worked. And the fact that their skin has endured in ancient reliefs and mummified remains, often looking remarkably well preserved, speaks volumes about the effectiveness of these early, albeit somewhat pungent, protective barriers. This was the first, essential step in their quest for enduring beauty, creating a foundation of protected, nourished skin, ready to face the dazzling, unforgiving Egyptian sun. Alright, now that you've got your basic skin barrier slathered on, a lovely blend of purified animal fat and fragrant spices, smelling faintly of, well, let's just say ancient market. It's time to focus on the windows to your soul. In ancient Egypt, your eyes weren't just for seeing, they were for being seen. They were the focal point, the expressive center of your face, especially in a land where your forehead might be covered by a wig or a headdress, and your mouth often set in a dignified, neutral line. So, how did they make those eyes absolutely pop, even in the blinding glare of the Egyptian sun? They had a secret weapon, a dark, mysterious powder that became as iconic as the pyramids themselves, Kohl. Now, Kohl is not just some eyeliner you pick up at the drugstore. This stuff was serious business, both for beauty and for practical reasons. The primary ingredient, and this is where it gets fascinatingly historical and a tiny bit alarming by modern standards, was often galena, a dark gray, metallic-looking mineral that's essentially lead sulfide. Yes, you heard that right. Lead. We'll just gloss over the whole toxicity thing for now and focus on the magic it performed. Galena was ground into an incredibly fine powder, so fine it would feel like silk between your fingers. This powder was then mixed with oils, like castor oil or almond oil, or sometimes just water, to create a smooth paste. This paste was then applied with a delicate, slender applicator, usually a thin stick made of wood, ivory, or even bronze, to line both the upper and lower eyelids, often extending outwards into elegant wings. The effect? It dramatically defined the eyes, making them appear larger, more luminous, and creating a striking contrast against their often tanned or even subtly made-up skin. It was like a natural eyeshadow and eyeliner combined, creating a dramatic, captivating look that was both alluring and incredibly powerful. But the Egyptians didn't just use Kohl for pure aesthetics. Oh no, this was ancient Egypt, where every little detail had a deeper meaning, a purpose, often tied to the divine or practical survival. The Kohl lining served multiple functions. Firstly, the dark pigment helped to reduce the harsh glare of the intense desert sunlight, much like skiers today wear black under their eyes to minimize glare. So, in a way, it was an ancient, albeit potent, form of sunglasses for the delicate skin around your eyes. Secondly, and this is truly amazing, the lead sulfide in galena, when it reacted with sulfur compounds in the air and the sunlight, actually produced a small amount of a type of antimonial lead chloride. Now, don't get too excited, but this compound was found to have antimicrobial properties. Yes, this ancient eyeliner might have actually helped prevent eye infections in a dusty, fly-ridden environment. How's that for multitasking beauty? It's a testament to their keen observation of the natural world and their ability to harness its properties, even if they didn't fully understand the underlying science. The application of Kohl was an art in itself. It wasn't just about drawing a line. It was about symmetry, about creating a specific shape that enhanced the natural beauty of the eye. They had special jars and applicators, often beautifully decorated, showing just how important this ritual was. This was applied by everyone, from the humblest peasant woman to the highest queen. It was a universal aspect of Egyptian beauty and identity. And while history scholars are still debating the exact proportions of galena versus other minerals like antimony, zinc, or lead carbonates in different Kohl recipes, and how much of that antibacterial effect was truly intentional versus a lucky accident, the impact of Kohl on Egyptian aesthetics is undeniable. It gave their eyes a depth, a mystery, and a certain divine sparkle that we still marvel at in ancient tomb paintings and statues. It was more than makeup. It was a statement of beauty, health, and perhaps even a touch of the sacred. So, as you're looking in your own mirror, perhaps reaching for your modern eyeliner, spare a thought for the ancient Egyptian woman, meticulously applying her Kohl, creating a look that was both timelessly elegant and surprisingly functional, a true guardian of her gaze against the harsh Egyptian sun. Alright, so you've got your dazzling, dark Kohl lining your eyes, making them look like mysterious, dark pools that could hold all the secrets of the desert. It's dramatic, it's defined, and frankly, it makes you feel a little bit like royalty, even if you're just a humble scribe trying to avoid the overseer's gaze. But the ancient Egyptians, as we've learned, were never one-trick ponies when it came to beauty. While the black coal was iconic, they also loved a touch of color, a hint of something more vibrant to grace their eyelids. And for that, they turned to the earth itself, specifically to a vibrant green mineral known as malachite. Malachite is this beautiful, deep green stone, often with swirling patterns, like the ripples on the Nile after a mild breeze. It's quite striking, and the Egyptians, ever observant of nature's palette, saw its potential for adornment. They would grind malachite into a fine powder, much like they did with galena for Kohl. This green powder would then be carefully applied, usually to the upper eyelid, sometimes just above the crease, or sometimes in a more blended fashion. Imagine it, the deep, defined black line of Kohl framing your eye, and then that soft, earthy green accentuating your upper lid. It created a look that was both natural and sophisticated, reminiscent of the lush papyrus reeds that fringed the riverbanks, or the vibrant green scarab beetles that were symbols of rebirth and protection. This green eye makeup wasn't just about adding a pop of color, it carried symbolic weight too. Green, in ancient Egypt, was often associated with fertility, rebirth, and the god Osiris, the god of the afterlife, agriculture, and renewal. So, by wearing green eye makeup, women, and sometimes men too, were not only beautifying themselves, but they were also invoking the powers of these life-affirming deities and concepts. It was a way of aligning themselves with the life-giving forces of the world, a subtle, yet powerful connection to their spiritual beliefs. It's a far cry from us picking out a new eyeshadow palette based on the latest fashion trend, isn't it? Their choices were deeply embedded in their worldview. The application of this green pigment, along with the Kohl, was likely a daily ritual for many, especially among the wealthier classes. They would have had their own specialized cosmetics palettes, often made of slate or ivory, with little depressions for the powdered pigments, and a separate compartment for the oils or resins used to mix them. These palettes themselves were often beautifully crafted, sometimes in the shape of animals like fish or birds, reflecting their connection to the natural world and their reverence for its forms. Historians are still piecing together the exact recipes for how they mixed the malachite powder with a binder to make it adhere to the skin without flaking off. It could have been a simple mix with oil, or perhaps a bit of gum arabic, a natural resin from acacia trees, which is still used today in art and cosmetics. The exact binders might vary, and that's one of those little scholarly debates that keeps things interesting. Did they use animal fats, plant gums, or maybe even honey? Each would have had slightly different properties, affecting the longevity and finish of the makeup. So, as you sit here, perhaps contemplating the subtle green hue that could grace your eyelids, imagine the skilled hands of an ancient Egyptian woman, carefully mixing her malachite pigment. She's not just applying makeup. She's weaving together beauty, symbolism, and a connection to the very essence of life in her culture. It's a glimpse into a world where adornment was deeply intertwined with meaning, making every stroke of the applicator a ritual, a prayer, and an artistic expression. The combination of dark, defining Kohl and vibrant green malachite created an eye that was not only stunning to behold, but also carried a rich tapestry of cultural significance. It's a look that has captivated imaginations for millennia, a testament to the enduring allure of ancient Egyptian beauty secrets. All right, you've got your eyes looking fierce with that Kohl and a hint of green, making you feel like a proper Egyptian queen. But what about the rest of you? We've talked about the basic protective oil barrier, but the ancient Egyptians, oh boy, they took their skin health and luxurious pampering to a whole other level. And when it comes to pampering, there's one ingredient that stands out, something so incredibly luxurious and beneficial that it's practically synonymous with ancient Egyptian indulgence: milk and honey. Yes, the same duo that we still consider a comforting treat or a gentle remedy today was a staple in the Egyptian beauty routine, especially for the elite. Imagine this. You've had a long day of, well, whatever glamorous Egyptian activities you engage in, maybe overseeing the construction of a new obelisk, or perhaps engaging in some high-stakes political maneuvering, or even just trying to keep your pet cat from knocking over your hieroglyphic scrolls. Now it's time to unwind. You head to your private bathing chamber, or perhaps a designated bathing area in your grand estate. Instead of just plain water, Your bath is filled with warm milk. Not just a splash, mind you, but a generous amount of milk, possibly from cows, but more famously, from goats. Why goats? Well, goat's milk is richer in lactic acid than cow's milk, and lactic acid is a natural alpha-hydroxy acid, AHA. For those who aren't keeping up with skincare jargon, AHAs are like tiny exfoliation wizards. They gently dissolve the dead skin cells clinging to the surface of your skin, revealing the fresher, brighter skin underneath. So a milk bath was essentially a luxurious, full-body exfoliating treatment. It would have made your skin feel incredibly soft, smooth, and supple. But they didn't stop there. To further enhance the benefits, they'd often add honey. Honey, you see, is not just a sweetener for your tea or a good friend to your throat when you have a cough. It's a natural humectant, meaning it attracts and retains moisture. In the dry Egyptian climate, this was incredibly valuable. By adding honey to the milk bath, they were not only boosting the exfoliating properties, but also deeply moisturizing the skin, leaving it feeling incredibly soft and hydrated. Honey also has natural antibacterial and antioxidant properties, so it was also beneficial for skin health, helping to keep it clear and perhaps even slowing down the signs of aging, though they might not have used that exact term. So, picture yourself sinking into this warm, fragrant bath, the creamy milk and sweet honey enveloping your skin. It would have felt incredibly indulgent, a true sensory experience. This wasn't just a quick rinse. It was a ritual of purification, rejuvenation, and self-care. The combination of milk's exfoliating power and honey's moisturizing and healing properties was a potent concoction for achieving that famed Egyptian radiance. And it wasn't just for bathing. They would also create masks and poultices from milk and honey to apply to their faces and other parts of their bodies for more targeted treatments. You might find them mixing it with other ingredients, like finely ground almonds for extra exfoliation or essential oils for added fragrance and therapeutic benefits. Now, the historical debate here, as always, lies in the specifics. How much milk? What kind of milk? Was it always mixed with honey, or were there variations? Some texts suggest that Cleopatra herself bathed in milk from donkeys, believing it had even greater rejuvenating properties. And honestly, if anyone could afford that many donkeys for their bathwater, it was likely her. Donkey milk is rich in vitamins and minerals, and some studies suggest it may have skin-healing properties. So, while goat's milk was common, the ultimate luxury might have involved a whole herd of donkeys. It highlights the incredible disparity between the elite and the common folk, where a simple milk and honey bath was a symbol of immense wealth and status. For the average Egyptian, clean water and maybe a bit of plain oil would have been the norm. But for the queens, the priestesses, and the wealthy noblewomen, these milk and honey baths were a way to not just enhance their beauty, but to connect with their sense of divine grace and maintain the appearance befitting their status. It was a secret weapon, a luxurious ritual that helped them achieve that famously smooth, soft, and luminous skin, even under the harshest desert sun. Alright, we've bathed in milk and honey, our skin feeling soft and pampered, and our eyes are perfectly lined with kohl and a touch of green. Feeling pretty glamorous, right? But ancient Egyptians knew that beauty wasn't just about what you put on your skin, it was also about what you smelled like. In a land where cleanliness and perfume were closely linked to divinity and purity, scents were incredibly important. And they weren't just talking about a light spritz of something floral. Oh no, the Egyptians were masters of fragrance, and their perfumery was an art form, a science, and a vital part of their daily lives. They created complex, long-lasting perfumes and incense from the most precious natural ingredients available. And these scents weren't just for smelling good. They had deeper purposes, from religious rituals to warding off evil spirits. And yes, to making you smell utterly divine. When you think of Egyptian scents, you might first think of frankincense and myrrh. These aromatic resins, harvested from trees in places like the Arabian Peninsula and traded all the way to Egypt, were incredibly valuable and held immense cultural significance. Frankincense, with its warm, woody, slightly citrusy aroma, and myrrh, with its deeper, resinous, balsamic scent, were burned as incense in temples during religious ceremonies. They believed these sacred fumes carried prayers to the gods and purified the air. But these precious resins were also key ingredients in perfumes and cosmetics. They were often ground into a fine powder and mixed with animal fats or oils to create solid perfumes. or perfume bombs. Imagine a small, intricately carved alabaster jar filled with a solid balm that, when you dabbed it onto your skin, would slowly release its complex fragrance as it warmed. It was a sophisticated way to wear scent, long-lasting and subtle. But the Egyptians didn't stop at resins. They were also pioneers in extracting fragrant oils from flowers, leaves, and woods. Think about the flowers that grew along the Nile: lilies, lotus flowers, roses, jasmine. These were harvested and processed to capture their delicate scents. One of the most famous methods they used was called enfleurage, an ancient extraction process that, even today, is used to capture the purest floral scents. It involves pressing flowers onto a bed of odorless fat, usually animal fat that had been specially rendered and clarified. The fat would absorb the flower's fragrance, and this process would be repeated with fresh flowers multiple times until the fat was saturated with the desired scent. This perfumed fat, called a pomade, could then be used as a solid perfume, or the scent could be extracted from the fat using alcohol to create a liquid perfume. It was labor-intensive, requiring constant attention and vast quantities of flowers, which is why these perfumed oils were incredibly expensive and reserved for the elite. Beyond the florals and resins, they also used fragrant woods like cedarwood, which has a rich, balsamic, and slightly earthy aroma. Cedarwood was not only used in incense and perfumes, but also for making cosmetic containers, boxes, and even sarcophagi, partly because its scent was believed to repel insects and prevent decay. So, you're not just smelling nice, you're also getting a protective benefit from the very fragrance you're wearing. It's like a multitasking beauty product from antiquity. The use of these perfumes and incense wasn't just about personal adornment. They were deeply interwoven with the Egyptian understanding of the divine and the afterlife. Scents were used in mummification to help preserve the body and to provide pleasant aromas for the deceased in the afterlife. Temple rituals often involved burning specific incenses at different times of the day or for particular deities. It's believed that different scents were associated with different gods and goddesses. For example, lotus was associated with creation and rebirth, while jasmine might have been linked to other deities. It's a fascinating area where historical scholars are still trying to connect specific scents to specific rituals, piecing together clues from temple inscriptions, tomb paintings, and the actual residues found in ancient cosmetic containers. They might find microscopic traces of essential oils or resins, and then try to match them with known plants and their symbolic meanings. It's a bit like being a scent detective, trying to reconstruct the olfactory landscape of a lost civilization. So, the next time you wear a perfume, remember the ancient Egyptians, who didn't just wear scent, they lived and breathed it, weaving it into the very fabric of their lives, their spirituality, and their enduring quest for beauty. You've got your skin protected, your eyes defined, your body perfumed, and you're feeling pretty good, right? But in ancient Egypt, cleanliness wasn't just about smelling nice or looking good. It was about something much deeper, something tied to their entire worldview. You see, for the Egyptians, hygiene and purity were intrinsically linked to the divine. To be clean was to be closer to the gods, to be acceptable in their presence, and to prepare oneself for the afterlife. So, while we might think of a bath as a simple way to wash off the day's grime, for an ancient Egyptian, it was often a ritual, a purifying act that held significant spiritual weight. The Nile, that great life-giver, was central to this concept of purity. While it was indeed a source of drinking water, processed, of course, to make it safer, they weren't completely reckless. Its waters were also used for ritualistic cleansing. Imagine the scene. A person, perhaps a priest before entering a temple, or someone preparing for a special ceremony, or even just an ordinary individual seeking spiritual renewal, would approach the banks of the Nile. They would likely perform a ritual cleansing, washing their hands, face, and feet in the river's waters. This wasn't just a quick splash. It was a deliberate act of purification, a symbolic washing away of impurities, both physical and spiritual, that might have accumulated from the world outside. It was a way of shedding the mundane and preparing oneself for the sacred. But the Nile wasn't the only place for cleansing. Private homes, especially those of the wealthy, often had designated bathing areas. These weren't the luxurious marble bathrooms we might picture, but rather simple rooms with drains, where water could be poured from vessels. They would use water, often heated, and sometimes mixed with those fragrant oils and perfumes we talked about earlier, to wash their bodies. Clean linen was essential, too. Egyptians were known for their fine linen clothing, and it was laundered regularly. Imagine the process: soaking the linen in water, possibly with some natural cleansing agents derived from plants or minerals, then rinsing it thoroughly. Clean clothes were a sign of status and purity. Dirty, unkempt clothing would have been a definite social faux pas, and likely a spiritual faux pas too. It's important to remember that while the wealthy had access to more elaborate bathing setups and precious oils, the concept of cleanliness was widespread. Even in simpler dwellings, there would have been efforts made to stay clean. They used natural materials, like sand and water, to scrub, and simple basins to hold water for washing. The emphasis was on regular, thorough washing, especially of the hands and face, as these were considered the most visible signs of purity. Now, here's a little nugget that might surprise you, and it's one of those fascinating points that historians and archaeologists still debate: the exact prevalence of private toilets and wastewater disposal systems. While grand public latrines existed in some larger settlements and temple complexes, the extent of private plumbing in domestic homes is still a subject of discussion. Some evidence suggests that more affluent homes might have had rudimentary flushing systems, or at least designated areas for waste disposal that were regularly cleared. However, for many, waste was likely collected in pots or pits that were then emptied. It's not the most glamorous topic, but it's a crucial part of understanding their daily lives and their commitment to hygiene. The fact that they even considered such systems, even in a limited capacity, shows a remarkable level of civic planning and concern for health. The entire process of bathing and cleansing was more than just hygiene. It was a spiritual discipline. It was about preparing the body to be a worthy vessel for the soul, both in this life and in the next. It was about aligning oneself with the forces of purity and order that they saw embodied in the cosmos and in their deities. So, when you take your own shower or bath tonight, perhaps think of it as a modern echo of that ancient ritual. You might not be washing away impurities to appease RA, but you are certainly engaging in a practice that connects you, in a very small way, to a millennia-old human desire for cleanliness, well-being, and a sense of sacredness. It's a reminder that our routines, even the most mundane, can sometimes hold surprising historical and cultural depth. You've got your skin pampered, your eyes looking like a mysterious desert oracle, and you're smelling divine. But let's not forget the extremities, shall we? In ancient Egypt, beauty wasn't just about the face or the body. It was a complete package. And what did they do to complete that package? They paid attention to the details, the little things that made a big difference. We're talking about the hands, and, more specifically, the fingernails. Now, you might think fingernails are just, well, fingernails. But in ancient Egypt, they were a canvas, a statement, and a reflection of your status and your connection to the divine. So what did they do with their nails? The most common and iconic practice was nail staining with henna. Henna, derived from the dried and powdered leaves of the henna plant, is a natural dye that produces a reddish-brown color. This was used by both men and women, though women often went for more elaborate and vibrant shades. The process would involve creating a paste from henna powder and water, and then carefully applying it to the nails. It could be a simple, uniform color, or more intricate designs could be painted onto the nails, forming patterns, swirls, or even small symbols. Imagine having your fingernails meticulously painted in a rich, earthy red, like dried clay or the sunset over the pyramids. It was a very deliberate, artistic choice. The shade of henna could vary depending on the plant, the brewing method, and the duration it was left on. Some might have achieved a lighter reddish-orange hue, while others aimed for a deeper, more intense crimson or even a dark brownish red. The color itself carried meaning. Red was often associated with vitality, life, and protection. It was a bold color, a statement against the muted tones of linen clothing and the desert landscape. It suggested vibrancy and confidence. It's worth noting that while we often associate henna with intricate patterns painted on skin, in the case of nails, the focus was often on achieving a beautiful, solid color. Now, here's a little bit of historical debate and a curious fact. While henna was widely used, there's also evidence suggesting that some elite individuals might have used other pigments or dyes for their nails. Some scholars propose that red ochre, a type of natural clay pigment, might have been used to achieve different shades of red or orange. There's even speculation that certain rare and expensive minerals could have been ground and applied, though direct evidence for this is more scarce. What is certain is that the practice of coloring nails was well established and considered a mark of refinement. Historians are still poring over detailed tomb findings and textual fragments to understand the full spectrum of ancient Egyptian nail care and coloring practices. The application of henna was likely a time-consuming process. To get a good, even color, the paste needed to be left on for several hours, or even overnight, before being carefully scraped off. This wasn't something you did in a rush. It required patience and a steady hand. It's also possible that after the henna was applied and dried, the nails might have been buffed and polished, perhaps using smooth stones or leather to give them a lovely sheen. The goal was not just color, but a healthy, lustrous appearance. It's also important to remember that this was a practice primarily enjoyed by the upper classes, who had the leisure time and the resources to dedicate to such detailed beauty rituals. For the average peasant woman, working in the fields or managing household chores, meticulously applying henna to her nails might have been a luxury she couldn't afford or wouldn't have the time for. However, the idea of enhancing one's appearance through nail adornment wasn't entirely confined to the elite. Even simple forms of nail care, like keeping them clean and perhaps gently buffed, would have been part of a general effort towards personal grooming and presentation. So, as you look at your own hands right now, think about the ancient Egyptian woman who carefully painted her nails with henna, adding a touch of vibrant color and a subtle ritual to her day. It was a small detail, perhaps, but one that spoke volumes about her society's values, their appreciation for aesthetics, and their belief that beauty truly was meant to be observed from the tips of your fingers to the gaze of your eyes. It's a reminder that even the smallest elements of our personal care have a long and fascinating history, stretching back to the very dawn of civilization, nurtured by the hands of people just as concerned with looking and feeling good as we are today. All right, you've got your skin protected, your eyes looking sharp, and your nails sporting a lovely shade of henna. You're smelling fantastic, thanks to those precious oils and resins. But as we've seen, the ancient Egyptians weren't just about the face and the hands. Their concept of beauty and adornment was quite holistic. It extended to the entire body. And that means, of course, the hair, and even the body itself, were treated with just as much care and attention. We're talking about more than just a quick wash. We're diving into how they maintain their hair, and how they use those fragrant oils and fats to keep their skin feeling supple and protected, turning their entire bodies into a canvas for scent and care. Let's start with the hair. Now, in the intense heat and dust of Egypt, keeping one's hair in pristine condition was a challenge. For many, especially those who worked outdoors or in dusty environments, hair could become dry, brittle, and frankly, a bit unmanageable. And then there's the issue of cleanliness and lice. Yes, even in ancient Egypt, pesky insects were a concern. So what did they do? Well, many Egyptians, particularly those of higher status, chose to shave their heads completely. This might sound a bit drastic to us, but think about the benefits in that climate. It kept them cooler, cleaner, and free from the dreaded lice. For most of the population, and especially for women who wanted to maintain their natural hair, regular washing with water and perhaps a mild, plant-based soap or cleansing agent was key. But for that truly glamorous, regal look, or for special occasions, there was a game changer: wigs. Egyptians were masters of wig making. They would use human hair, often donated by servants or bought from traders, and meticulously attach it to a cap or a mesh. These wigs could be styled in all sorts of ways: long and straight, elaborately braided, or even curled. They were often adorned with decorative combs, ribbons, and even jewelry. Imagine seeing someone with perfectly sculpted, dark, glossy hair, only to realize it's a wig. It was an essential part of their formal attire, much like a fancy hat or a tailored suit is for us today. And to keep these wigs and their natural hair looking lustrous, they would apply those same fragrant oils and perfumed fats we've been talking about. A good quality oil would not only make the hair shine, but also help to condition it, preventing dryness and breakage. Some oils, like castor oil, were particularly known for their conditioning properties and were thought to promote hair growth. Beyond the hair, let's not forget the skin of the body. We've mentioned those animal fats infused with spices and resins as general protective barriers. These were applied all over the body, not just the face. Think of it as a natural, fragrant moisturizer. In a dry climate, preventing moisture loss from the skin was paramount. These oils and fats would create a seal, keeping the skin hydrated and preventing it from cracking or becoming too rough. They also provided a pleasant scent, meaning that even your arms and legs would carry the subtle fragrance of lotus or myrrh throughout the day. There's also an interesting archaeological find that sheds light on their body care: the beauty patches or cosmetic dots. Small, circular marks, often made from a dark pigment, have been found on the skin of mummies and in ancient depictions. The exact purpose of these is still a bit debated among scholars. Some theories suggest they were purely decorative, like ancient freckles or beauty marks applied to enhance appearance, perhaps mimicking certain patterns or shapes that were considered beautiful. Other theories propose they might have had a medicinal or protective function, perhaps used to ward off insects or even to apply medicinal substances directly to the skin. It's a bit of a mystery, and that's what makes it so intriguing. Was it just an early form of cosmetic tattooing or an ancient remedy? We might never know for sure, but it shows they were thinking about adorning and protecting even the most specific parts of their skin. The whole body was considered a temple, or at least a canvas for expressing one's status, health, and connection to the divine. Regular oiling and perfuming weren't just about smelling good. They were part of a larger ritual of self-care and presentation. It was about maintaining a sense of order and beauty in a world that could be chaotic and harsh. So, as you continue your journey through ancient Egyptian beauty, remember that it was a full-body commitment, a total immersion in a culture that understood the profound link between outer care and inner well-being. They weren't just painting their faces, they were anointing their entire being. You're looking fabulous, feeling pampered, and smelling like a divine bouquet. Your eyes are sharp, your skin is glowing, your nails are painted, and your hair, whether natural or a fabulous wig, is shining. But now, let's talk about something that, let's be honest, we all think about at some point during the day, or perhaps first thing in the morning: dental hygiene. And in ancient Egypt, they took this surprisingly seriously, even if their methods were a bit more robust than what we're used to. Forget your minty toothpaste and fluoride rinses. The ancient Egyptians had their own unique ways of keeping their pearly whites in decent condition, and it wasn't always gentle. First, let's set the scene. Life in ancient Egypt, particularly for those who worked the land, involved eating foods that were often gritty with sand and dust. The grain they ground for bread, for instance, was milled using stones that would inevitably shed small particles into the flour. When you then bake that into bread and chew it day after day, those tiny abrasive particles can really do a number on your enamel over time. You can imagine, after years of eating gritty bread, your teeth might not be looking quite as pristine as you'd like. So, it's no wonder they developed methods to try and combat this, and to generally keep their mouths clean. Their approach to cleaning their teeth was multifaceted. For general hygiene, they used a sort of primitive toothbrush. This wasn't a fancy nylon-bristled affair. Imagine a twig, often from a fragrant tree like the Salvadora persica, also known as the toothbrush tree. Yes, that's a thing. Frayed at one end. You'd chew on the frayed end until it became brush-like, then use that to scrub your teeth. These frayed twigs, called dateless or chew sticks, were quite common. They were disposable, often flavored, and the natural properties of the wood itself might have had some antibacterial benefits. So, you'd have your little twig, maybe dipped in something slightly abrasive, and you'd scrub away. But what did they use for toothpaste? This is where it gets interesting and a little bit gritty. They didn't have minty paste. Instead, they used a variety of abrasive substances. One common concoction involved mixing powdered ox hooves, myrrh, and perhaps a bit of salt or ash. Yes, powdered hooves. Imagine that fine powder being scraped into your mouth. They might also have used crushed eggshells or crushed oyster shells, which are naturally abrasive. These powders would have been applied with their twig toothbrushes. The idea was to scrub away plaque and food particles. It was likely quite effective at cleaning, but probably not the most pleasant sensation. You can just picture yourself, gargling with something that feels like very fine sand, trying to scrape off whatever is stuck between your teeth, all the while trying not to think too hard about what the key ingredient actually is. Then there were the mouthwashes. To freshen their breath and further clean their mouths, they used concoctions that included things like mint, parsley, or even spices like cardamom and cinnamon. These would be boiled or steeped in water, then used as a mouth rinse. It's not entirely different from what we might do today with a natural mouthwash, though perhaps their ingredients were less refined and more potent. They also chewed on sweet-smelling herbs and spices, like the aforementioned parsley, mint, or even frankincense resin to freshen their breath and mask any unpleasant odors. It was a multi-pronged approach: scrubbing, rinsing, and freshening. The historical debate here often centers on the actual effectiveness and safety of these abrasive mixtures. While they certainly could have removed plaque and helped with oral hygiene, the constant use of abrasive powders like crushed eggshells or hooves could have potentially damaged tooth enamel over time, leading to sensitivity and other issues. However, given the state of their diet and the lack of modern dental care, their methods were likely a significant improvement over doing nothing at all. There's evidence of people suffering from tooth decay and abscesses, of course, but many mummified remains show surprisingly well-preserved teeth, suggesting that their efforts, however crude they seem to us, did have some positive impact. It's also worth noting that the elite, who had more access to different ingredients and perhaps more leisure time, might have had access to slightly more refined dental care, but even for them, it was a far cry from our modern dental practices. It just goes to show, even the pursuit of a healthy smile has a long, and sometimes quite startling, history. You've got your body moisturized, your eyes defined, your nails painted, your breath freshened, and your teeth, well, they're as clean as ancient Egyptian dental practices could manage. You're smelling fantastic, looking put together. But what about the crowning glory, the frame to those captivating eyes, the very symbol of status and identity for many in ancient Egypt? We're talking about hair. And the Egyptians, my friends, were seriously invested in their hair. Whether it was their own or someone else's that they borrowed, for a wig, they knew how to style it, care for it, and make it a statement. Let's start with the hair itself. The Egyptian climate, that relentless sun and dry air, wasn't exactly the best for maintaining healthy, lustrous locks. The sun could bleach and dry out hair, and the dust would get into everything. So, cleanliness was paramount. Many people, especially men and those who worked outdoors, would shave their heads completely. This might sound a bit extreme to us, but think about the benefits. It was cooler, much cleaner, and it kept away those ever-present, unwelcome guests, lice. If you've ever had to deal with that, you'll understand why eliminating the possibility entirely was quite appealing. But not everyone shaved their heads. Many, especially women and the elite, preferred to keep their natural hair or to wear wigs. The wigs. Egyptians were absolute masters of wig making. They would collect human hair, sometimes from servants, sometimes traded from abroad, and meticulously crafted into elaborate styles. These weren't just simple extensions. We're talking about wigs that could be long and flowing, intricately braided, curled, or even styled into structured geometric shapes. They were often worn for special occasions, religious ceremonies, or simply as a fashion statement to achieve a particular look that their own hair might not have allowed. Imagine the artistry involved. Each strand of hair carefully placed, styled, and secured. To maintain both natural hair and these magnificent wigs, oils and perfumes were essential. We've already talked about how fragrant oils were used for skin, but they were equally, if not more, important for hair. These oils, often infused with aromatic herbs and flowers like morina, lotus, or cedarwood, would be applied to the hair to condition it, make it shiny, and keep it from becoming dry and brittle. Think of it as a very ancient, very luxurious hair serum. Castor oil, for example, was known for its conditioning properties and was believed to promote hair growth and shine. They'd also use fats, like beef tallow or goose fat, as a base for these hair treatments, similar to how they used them for skin. It's a bit like using a heavy-duty hair mask today, but with ingredients that were much closer to nature and probably smelled a lot better than our modern chemical concoctions. And for those who went for the bald look, or perhaps even over their wigs, they had another trick: perfumed cones. You might have seen depictions of ancient Egyptians with these strange, waxy cones placed on top of their heads. These cones were made of solid fat, often mixed with fragrant resins or oils. As the day warmed up, or as the wearer moved, the cone would slowly melt, dripping the perfumed oil down over their face and shoulders. It was a portable, slow-release perfume system, and it also helped to condition the hair and scalp underneath. It sounds rather messy, and perhaps a bit comical to us, like wearing a melting candle on your head, but it was a very effective way to stay fragrant and presentable in the heat. It was a symbol of luxury and sophistication. The historical debate here often revolves around the exact composition of these cones and the precise methods of hair cleaning. While we know they used water and oils, the specific natural soaps or cleansing agents they might have employed are still being researched. Some evidence suggests they might have used certain plant extracts or even finely ground minerals mixed with water as a cleaning agent. It's also a subject of discussion whether the bald heads were solely for hygiene, or if they were also a fashion statement, or perhaps even linked to religious practices. Some priestly orders, for instance, might have adopted shaving their heads as a sign of devotion. And those beautiful wigs? They weren't just for the wealthy. Archaeological evidence shows that even commoners might have used simpler, less elaborate wigs for special occasions. It's a reminder that the pursuit of looking good, of presenting oneself with care and style, is a human endeavor that transcends time and culture. The ancient Egyptians, with their elaborate wigs, their fragrant oils, and their unique approach to hair care, certainly understood that. You've got your body moisturized, your eyes defined, your nails painted, your breath freshened, and your teeth, well, they're as clean as ancient Egyptian dental practices could manage. You're smelling fantastic, looking put together. But what about the crowning glory, the frame to those captivating eyes, the very symbol of status and identity for many in ancient Egypt? We're talking about hair. And the Egyptians, my friends, were seriously invested in their hair. Whether it was their own or someone else's that they borrowed, for a wig, they knew how to style it, care for it, and make it a statement. Let's start with the hair. The Egyptian climate, that relentless sun and dry air, wasn't exactly the best for maintaining healthy, lustrous locks. The sun could bleach and dry out hair, and the dust would get into everything. So, cleanliness was paramount. Many people, especially men and those who worked outdoors, would shave their heads completely. This might sound a bit extreme to us, but think about the benefits. It was cooler, much cleaner, and it kept away those ever-present, unwelcome guests, lice. If you've ever had to deal with that, you'll understand why eliminating the possibility entirely was quite appealing. But not everyone shaved their heads. Many, especially women and the elite, preferred to keep their natural hair or to wear wigs. The wigs. Egyptians were absolute masters of wig making. They would collect human hair, sometimes from servants, sometimes traded from abroad, and meticulously crafted into elaborate styles. These weren't just simple extensions. We're talking about wigs that could be long and flowing, intricately braided, curled, or even styled into structured geometric shapes. They were often worn for special occasions, religious ceremonies, or simply as a fashion statement to achieve a particular look that their own hair might not have allowed. Imagine the artistry involved. Each strand of hair carefully placed, styled, and secured. To maintain both natural hair and these magnificent wigs, oils and perfumes were essential. We've already talked about how fragrant oils were used for skin, but they were equally, if not more, important for hair. These oils, often infused with aromatic herbs and flowers like moringa, lotus, or cedarwood, would be applied to the hair to condition it, make it shiny, and keep it from becoming dry and brittle. Think of it as a very ancient, very luxurious hair serum. Castor oil, for example, was known for its conditioning properties and was believed to promote hair growth and shine. They'd also use fats, like beef tallow or goose fat, as a base for these hair treatments, similar to how they used them for skin. It's a bit like using a heavy-duty hair mask today, but with ingredients that were much closer to nature and probably smelled a lot better than our modern chemical concoctions. And for those who went for the bald look, or perhaps even over their wigs, they had another trick: perfumed cones. You might have seen depictions of ancient Egyptians with these strange, waxy cones placed on top of their heads. These cones were made of solid fat, often mixed with fragrant resins or oils. As the day warmed up, or as the wearer moved, the cone would slowly melt, dripping the perfumed oil down over their face and shoulders. It was a portable, slow-release perfume system, and it also helped to condition the hair and scalp underneath. It sounds rather messy, and perhaps a bit comical to us, like wearing a melting candle on your head, but it was a very effective way to stay fragrant and presentable in the heat. It was a symbol of luxury and sophistication. The historical debate here often revolves around the exact composition of these cones and the precise methods of hair cleaning. While we know they used water and oils, the specific natural soaps or cleansing agents they might have employed are still being researched. Some evidence suggests they might have used certain plant extracts or even finely ground minerals mixed with water as a cleaning agent. It's also a subject of discussion whether the bald heads were solely for hygiene, or if they were also a fashion statement, or perhaps even linked to religious practices. Some priestly orders, for instance, might have adopted shaving their heads as a sign of devotion. And those beautiful wigs? They weren't just for the wealthy. Archaeological evidence shows that even commoners might have used simpler, less elaborate wigs for special occasions. It's a reminder that the pursuit of looking good, of presenting oneself with care and style, is a human endeavor that transcends time and culture. The ancient Egyptians, with their elaborate wigs, their fragrant oils, and their unique approach to hair care, certainly understood that. Alright, we've covered the major bases of beauty: skin protection, eye makeup, body fragrance, nail care, and of course, hair. You're looking pretty fantastic, ready to face the Egyptian sun and command respect. But what about the actual substances they used? We've mentioned animal fats, kohl, malachite, milk, honey, and fragrant oils. But these weren't just magically appearing from nowhere. The Egyptians were quite resourceful and had quite the cosmetic toolkit. Let's take a closer look at some of the specific ingredients and the tools they employed in their ancient beauty routines. It's a fascinating glimpse into their practical, hands-on approach to looking good. We've touched upon the animal fats like tallow and goose fat, and how they were rendered and purified. This was the base for so many of their products, from skin balms to hair conditioners and even solid perfumes. Imagine the process of rendering fat. It would have been a communal activity, likely involving heating the fat slowly, skimming off impurities, and then carefully storing the pure fat. This fat was then mixed with other ingredients. For instance, to make a skin balm, they might blend it with beeswax. Beeswax is a natural emollient and a fantastic emulsifier, meaning it helps to bind oil and water-based ingredients together, creating smoother, more stable creams and balms. It also creates a protective barrier on the skin, locking in moisture. Think of it as the ancient world's equivalent of petroleum jelly or a rich moisturizing balm, but derived from bees. Then there were the minerals, the source of their vibrant colors and defining lines. We've talked about galena for kohl, a lead sulfide that gave that dramatic black pigment, and malachite, that beautiful green mineral, for eyeshadow. But there were others. For red pigments, they used red ochre, which is essentially iron oxide. This was a common pigment used across many ancient cultures, providing shades from a soft pinkish red to a deep, earthy rust. They would grind these minerals into incredibly fine powders. This powdering process was crucial. The finer the powder, the smoother the application, the better it would adhere to the skin, and the less likely it was to irritate. This meticulous grinding suggests a real attention to texture and finish in their cosmetic preparations. Beyond these, they also used chalk or gypsum, calcium sulfate, for white pigments, which could be used for general lightening and sometimes as a base for other colors or to create highlights. It's important to remember that while these minerals were readily available, some, like lead-based galena, posed significant health risks. The Egyptians, however, were likely unaware of the long-term toxicity, focusing instead on the immediate cosmetic and perceived protective benefits. It's a stark reminder of how much our understanding of safety has evolved. And let's not forget the botanicals. The Nile Valley was rich with plants. Lotus flowers, symbols of creation and rebirth, were not only visually beautiful, but also likely used for their fragrant oils. Moringa oil, extracted from the seeds of the moringa tree, was particularly valued for its stability and skin-soothing properties. It's an oil that's still popular in skincare today for good reason. Castor oil, from the seeds of the castor bean plant, was used for hair, skin, and even as a laxative. Talk about a multi-purpose ingredient. And of course, henna, the star of nail and hair dyeing, was a vital botanical in their beauty repertoire. Now, all these wonderful ingredients needed to be mixed, stored, and applied. And for that, they had a surprisingly sophisticated set of tools. You've probably seen depictions of ancient Egyptian cosmetic palettes. These weren't just random bits of stone. They were often beautifully crafted objects made from slate, ivory, or even precious metals, carved into animal shapes like fish, birds, or hippopotamuses. These palettes had small depressions where the powdered pigments would be mixed with oil or water. And to apply the kohl or eyeshadow, they used slender applicators, often made of wood, ivory, or metal, with a pointed tip or a small spoon-like end. These were delicate instruments, designed for precision. For bathing and applying oils, they used bowls and jars, many of which were exquisite examples of ancient craftsmanship, made from alabaster, pottery, or faience, a glazed ceramic material. These containers were often sealed tightly to preserve the precious contents. And to aid in grooming, they had combs made from wood or bone, and sometimes even small mirrors, usually made of polished bronze or copper. These mirrors wouldn't give you a perfectly clear reflection like our modern glass mirrors, but they were certainly good enough to help you check your eyeliner or adjust your wig. It's a historical tidbit that historians debate. How common were these mirrors, and how reflective were they really? Some bronze mirrors were polished to an amazing degree, giving a surprisingly clear reflection, while others might have been more symbolic or used for specific ritualistic purposes. It's the little things, isn't it? The tools, the containers, the meticulous preparation. All of it points to a culture that deeply valued beauty and saw it as an integral part of life, not just a superficial adornment. We've talked about the ingredients, the tools, the rituals of cleansing and perfuming. Now, let's get to the heart of the matter, the why behind all this meticulous attention to appearance. In ancient Egypt, beauty wasn't just about looking good. It was deeply woven into the fabric of their society, intertwined with religion, social status, and even their beliefs about the afterlife. It's easy for us to see their elaborate makeup and cosmetic practices as mere vanity, but for them, it was much more profound. It was about order, purity, and connecting with the divine. Let's start with the most obvious connection: religion and the gods. The ancient Egyptians believed their gods were incredibly beautiful and powerful, and they sought to emulate them in their own appearance. Many deities were depicted with distinct cosmetic features, most famously the gods with their characteristic kohl-lined eyes. For example, Horus, the falcon-headed god of the sky and kingship, was often depicted with prominent kohl lines around his eyes. The kohl was thought to protect his divine eyes from the sun's glare and also represented his connection to the celestial realm. So, by applying kohl, ordinary Egyptians were, in a way, imitating their gods, aligning themselves with divine powers, and seeking their protection. It was a form of devotion, a visual prayer. Then there's the god Bes, a fascinating deity often depicted as a grotesque, dwarf-like figure, adorned with makeup and elaborate headdresses. Bes was the god of protection, especially for women and children, and was associated with music, dance, and good fortune. His playful, somewhat fearsome appearance, complete with painted-on eyes and a beard, was meant to ward off evil spirits and bring joy. Even this rather unusual deity wore makeup, highlighting how widespread the practice was. The use of cosmetics was also closely tied to purity and cleansing rituals. As we discussed in a previous chapter, cleanliness was paramount for religious observance. Before entering a temple or performing sacred rites, individuals would purify themselves, and this often included applying cosmetics. The fragrant oils and perfumes used were not just for personal scent, but were also believed to purify the body and make it a more suitable vessel for divine connection. It's a bit like how in some modern religious traditions, special vestments or incense are used. For Egyptians, cosmetics played a similar role in preparing for the sacred. Beyond the religious, there's the clear link to social status. The more elaborate and expensive the cosmetics, the rare oils, the finely ground minerals, the beautifully crafted containers, the higher your status. If you were a noblewoman, you would have had access to the best materials and the most skilled artisans to prepare your beauty products. Your appearance was a public declaration of your wealth and position in society. A woman who was impeccably adorned, from her perfumed hair to her painted nails, signaled that she belonged to the elite. It was a visual language of social hierarchy. And then there's the fascinating aspect of beauty and the afterlife. The ancient Egyptians believed that the deceased would continue their lives in the afterlife, and they needed to be prepared for it. This preparation involved mummification, of course, but it also included ensuring the deceased looked their best, just as they did in life. Elaborate tomb paintings often show the deceased adorned with jewelry, makeup, and fine linen, ready to greet the gods and continue their journey. Cosmetic palettes, jars of kohl, and even small applicators have been found in tombs, suggesting that these items were considered necessary for the afterlife. It's like packing your favorite beauty kit for a very, very long trip. They believed that looking beautiful and pure in death was essential for a successful transition to the next world. The historical debate here often focuses on the extent to which these practices were purely symbolic versus genuinely believed to have magical or protective properties. Did they believe that Kohl literally kept evil spirits away from their eyes? Or was it more of a symbolic representation of protection and divine favor? Most likely, it was a bit of both. The lines between the practical, the aesthetic, and the spiritual were very blurred in ancient Egypt. What we see as mere makeup was, for them, a complex system of beliefs, rituals, and social markers. It was a way to navigate the world, to connect with the divine, to affirm their place in society, and to prepare for eternity. So, when you see those iconic images of Egyptian beauties, remember that you're looking at more than just ancient fashion. You're looking at a reflection of a deeply spiritual, highly organized, and surprisingly sophisticated civilization that understood the power of appearance in shaping one's reality. We've journeyed through the ancient Egyptian world, exploring how they crafted beauty and preserved their appearance against the relentless sun and dust. We've talked about the practical needs, the protective oils, the sun glare-reducing Kohl, the cleansing rituals. We've touched upon the luxurious indulgence of milk and honey baths, the fragrant secrets of perfumery, the meticulous care of nails and hair, and the very real significance of these practices in their religious beliefs, social structures, and their preparations for the eternal afterlife. It's a lot to take in, isn't it? You've virtually walked the dusty paths, smelled the ancient perfumes, and perhaps even imagined yourself applying that Kohl with a delicate reed applicator. But as we start to wrap up our exploration of the sun-kissed guardians of beauty, there's one final, crucial aspect to consider: the legacy and the enduring influence of these ancient practices. It's easy to dismiss these as relics of a bygone era, fascinating historical curiosities that have no bearing on our modern lives. But the truth is, the Egyptians were incredibly innovative, and many of their discoveries and techniques have echoed through the ages, subtly shaping the way we approach beauty and skincare even today. Think about it. Their foundational understanding of using natural oils and fats as moisturizers and barriers is the very bedrock of modern skincare. The concept of using plant-based ingredients like almond oil, castor oil, or morena oil for nourishment and protection is something we still value highly today. In fact, morena oil, which they prized for its stability and skin-soothing properties, is experiencing a renaissance in the natural beauty industry for its antioxidant and anti-inflammatory benefits. It's like finding a hidden treasure from ancient times that's suddenly relevant again. And the use of AHAs, like the lactic acid found in milk, for gentle exfoliation, that's a concept that underpins many of today's most effective skincare products. Those ancient milk baths were, in essence, an early, organic form of skin resurfacing. Then there's the pigments they used. While we no longer use lead-based Kohl due to its toxicity, the idea of defining the eyes with dark pigments, creating that dramatic, alluring look, has persisted through millennia. From the Egyptians to the Greeks and Romans, and all the way to the modern eyeliner we use today, the fundamental aesthetic principle remains. Even the concept of perfuming the body and creating long-lasting scents using natural extracts and fixatives, their understanding of enfleurage and resin-based perfumes laid the groundwork for modern perfumery. What's particularly fascinating, and this is something that historians are still actively researching, is the extent to which their cosmetic practices were truly understood as beneficial for health versus purely aesthetic. For instance, the Kohl protecting the eyes from glare and possibly from infection. Was this a known benefit or a happy accident? The minerals they used for color, did they have any other undiscovered properties? The debate continues, and new discoveries in archaeology and ancient texts are constantly refining our understanding. It's a field that's still very much alive, trying to decode the precise recipes and intentions behind these ancient cosmetic arts. Beyond the specific ingredients and techniques, there's a broader lesson here. The ancient Egyptians approached beauty not as a superficial effort, but as an integral part of a holistic lifestyle. It was about caring for the body, connecting with the divine, maintaining social order, and preparing for eternity. Their beauty rituals were an act of self-respect, a form of devotion, and a way of asserting their place in a vibrant, complex world. They understood that looking good often went hand in hand with feeling good, and that a well-cared-for appearance could convey power, status, and even spiritual purity. Their legacy is not just in the stone monuments they left behind, but also in these subtle, enduring practices that have shaped our own relationship with beauty. They showed us that even in the harshest conditions, humanity finds ways to express creativity, resilience, and a deep-seated desire for adornment and self-care. It's a testament to their ingenuity, their artistry, and their understanding of what it means to truly flourish. And now, as the last rays of that ancient Egyptian sun begin to set on our journey through their world of beauty and ritual, you might start to feel a gentle warmth, a soft stillness settling over you. Imagine the faint scent of morina oil and lingering myrrh, a whisper from across the sands, gently lulling you into a state of deep relaxation. The meticulous application of Kohl, the smooth glide of milk on your skin, the subtle shimmer of henna on your nails, all these ancient secrets are now blending together, not into a memory, but into the very fabric of your dreams. The dry desert air softens, the harsh sun mellows into a comforting twilight glow, and the busy streets of ancient Thebes fade into a peaceful, quiet landscape. You can feel yourself drifting, gently carried by the slow, rhythmic currents of the Nile, the distant sounds of flutes and soft chanting becoming softer, more distant, until they're just a gentle murmur in the background of your own quiet thoughts. The weight of the day, the stresses of the world, they're all fading away, replaced by a profound sense of peace, a deep, natural calm. You're safe, you're comfortable, and the only thing that matters now is the gentle descent into sweet, restorative sleep. Let the ancient whispers guide you. Let the serene rhythms of the past carry you away into a world of quiet dreams and peaceful rest. Sleep now. Sleep deeply.